All right, okay, hearing no more conversation, I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looking for approval of the agenda, addenda, and late items.
So moved.
Thank you, Director Pranger, seconded.
Clue.
Director Ross, thank you. Any objections? Carried. The next item.
Next item is 3.1. We have the draft Fraser Valley Regional Hospital District Board meeting minutes of March 18th, 2020.
So moved.
I didn't quite catch that.
Mercer.
Director, who, sorry?
Mercer.
Director Mercer, thank you, sorry.
Sorry.
And the seconder?
Clue.
Sorry, Director Clute, thank you. Any objections? Hearing none, carried. So now at this point, can I ask please the CAO if we could have some information for the next hospital board meeting to discuss election process, the legalities, et cetera, so that we can have something more formal.
Absolutely.
Okay, do I need a, sorry.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I'm not sure who that was. I apologize.
Lum, that's
Sorry,
Lum.
Director Lum, sorry. Okay, so I've moved that. Director Lum has seconded it. Is there discussion? Anybody have any queries, comments, further comments? Okay, hearing none. Any objections? Hearing none, carried. Okay, we go to reports from board directors. Is there anything with board members that they want to share at hospital board? Okay, and sorry, somebody wanted to say something?
Lowen.
Director Lowen.
I would like whoever's got the mic on to turn it off so I don't hear them clattering in their plates.
Yes.
Yep, if we could just remember to mute our phones or our devices, and I can even ask staff to just take a quick look through if there's any, because we can actually mute for you. If we could just mute all of the microphones besides the speaker, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Popov.
I'm sorry?
Popov, I have a question.
Okay, and this is on the motion or on the, sorry, no, it would be from
Reports from board directors.
From board directors, pardon me. Go ahead.
It's actually more of a question to CAO Kinnaman. Can we get a Bradley Center update where we're at with that? Or is that further on the agenda? I'm sorry.
I believe that's enclosed, Director
Oh, okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay,
No worries.
I didn't get an agenda, I'm sorry.
That's okay, no worries. We're now at public question period, and I'm not sure that there are any questions.
So what we've established, Acting Chair Alexis, is that we enabled the public due to the fact that our building is closed to the public and we're conducting this meeting via Zoom. We did advertise that members of the public could submit email questions for a public question period. We also have provided a telephone number, and I'll just read that out now. The telephone number is 604-702-5480. And members of the public are welcome to call in with their questions at this time, and staff will read out those questions for the board. Just so that you know, there is about a 40-second delay from the time of our meeting and the broadcast. So we will just slow things down a little bit here, and we will give the public a chance to actually receive what I just said, and give them that opportunity to call in. So if we can just pause for maybe a minute here, and I will let you know if I get the signal from staff that we've received any calls on the public portion of this agenda. So I'm not seeing any, so I think we can carry forward to the next item, Madam Chair.
The next item is then CAO Kinnaman.
is a resolution to close the meeting.
Moved by Director Ross, seconded
Owen?
seconded by Director Lowen. Any objections? Hearing none, carried.
And we will head into recess and go straight into our Fraser Valley Regional District Board meeting and turn it over to Chair Lum.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Alexis. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll call the open portion of the Fraser Valley Regional District Board meeting to order. Good evening, and before we start the agenda, may I say I just want to thank staff for setting up this opportunity. I think it was Director Adamson who said last time, believe it or not, I actually miss seeing you guys. So this is nice to be able to see most of you, and appreciate everybody being online here. I will say as well, just want to send out my appreciation for all of the healthcare workers and frontline workers, essential workers who are working so hard during this time. I know we've got a lot of our regional district staff working extremely hard, maintaining our critical infrastructure across the region. And I want to send my appreciation out to all of them and all of you for being online with us tonight as we attempt our first ever Fraser Valley Regional District Zoom meeting. So first item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking for approval of the agenda, addenda, and late items.
Okay,
So moved.
moved by Director Pranger and seconded by
Dixon.
Director Dixon. And all in favor? Opposed, if any? Don't hear any opposed. Next item.
Next item is item 3.1. We have the draft Fraser Valley Regional District Board meeting minutes from March 18th, 2020. And I would just like to draw your attention that there is an amendment to these minutes. If you turn in your agenda to page 27 of the agenda, item 19, rise and report out of closed meeting. I would just like to point out that it was noted by Director Davidson that there was an error, that we did neglect to identify an item for rise and report. That under item 19, it should read that the Fraser Valley Regional Board refused Director Davidson's out of mandate request. So we would like to recommend that amendment to the minutes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, it's a mover and a seconder on the minutes as amended.
Davidson.
Moved by Director Davidson, seconded by Director Alexis. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? And those minutes carry. Next item.
Next is item 4. We have committee and commission minutes for information and matters arising. Staff are available to answer any questions on those draft minutes.
Thank you. And any directors with questions? Director Raymond, did you have a question?
No, I was moving it.
You were moving, okay. And I think we don't even need a motion to move. Those are information.
For information, yeah.
Correct. Perfect. Thank you. And I don't see any other questions. So next item.
Next is item 5.1. We have the appointment of FVRD officers, and there's a motion for your consideration.
Move, Ross.
Second, Clute.
Thank you. That's moved by Director Ross, seconded by Director Clute. Discussion.
Blue, question?
Director Blue.
Thank you. I was just wondering, in the event, similar to what we were talking about a bit earlier, in the event that neither of these individuals are available to serve, what happens then?
Ms. Kinnaman.
Sure, I'll actually have Ms. Riley jump in on this one as corporate officer, but the short answer would be is that the bylaw associated with this is actually not named individuals, but named positions, but I'll have Ms. Riley speak to this item.
Thank you.
Ms. Riley.
Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. So in this case, we would have somebody stepping in as acting CAO if Ms. Kinnaman should be unavailable, and as well for myself.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions?
I don't have a question on this motion, but
Director Facio is still trying to get into this call. He's on the telephone. Could Miss Riley please contact him?
Thank you. And
Get on that right away.
we'll have staff connect with Director Facio.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Pranger. And any other questions on the motion? Don't see any. Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 6.1. We have the 2020 grant and aid request for the Lake Arac Community Association in Electoral Area C.
Thank you. We have a mover and a seconder.
Move.
It's
Director
moved by
Raymond.
Director Raymond.
I'll second. Rob?
Bales? Oh, sorry.
I see Director Bales. I was waiting there. Director Bales, thank you.
I was unmuting with my phone, but it didn't seem to work. So
No
the star
problem.
stick
I
seemed
figured
to
you'd
work.
be interested in this item, so let's record
No,
you.
I'm in
Second.
total support of it. So
Further, and any other discussion on the grant and aid?
Hamilton, I do have just a question, if I may, through the chair.
Please, Director Hamilton.
Because we're in this COVID-19 situation where events are limited to size, I'm just wondering if it plays a part in the festivities at Lake Arac. I'm certainly in support of supplying them with the grant and aid, but I'm just wondering if it makes a difference that some of the events that we have planned probably won't be happening this summer. And I think some of this was for a Canada Day celebration. So is that just up to the association to manage on their own?
Ms. Kinnaman?
Yes, through the chair to Director Hamilton, there are a number of grants and aid that are tied to these kinds of events, and as part of the requirement of getting a grant and aid, organizations have to provide the regional district at the end of the year an accounting of how those monies were spent. So in the event that organizations have to find different ways to celebrate or hold their events later on in the year, or perhaps not at all, it is expected that those monies will be reconciled at the end of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Bales?
Director Bales?
Yeah, I just like to elaborate on that. Generally, quite often, some of the nonprofits will have a bit of a bank account at the end of the year, so they might ask for less in the next year. There's traditionally some people that ask for grants and aids every year, and it'll be more or less depending on whether they've been able to spend the money or not.
Thank you, Director Bales. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, opposed if any, and the motion carries. Next item.
Next is 7.1. We have zoning amendment bylaw number 1546 for cannabis land uses in electoral area D.
Dickie moves.
It's moved by Director Dicky and seconded
Davidson.
Director Davidson. And discussion on this? Hearing no discussion, I'll call the question. This is for electoral area directors. All in favor? Any opposed? Don't hear any opposed.
Everybody hear me?
I can hear you, Director Facio. Welcome.
Thank the Lord for that.
We are live, Director Facio, and we were all a little concerned that we were not going to be able to adjourn the meeting without you. So thank you for joining us.
Hi, Leo.
Apologies.
Hi.
We'll call the question on this item. We're right in the middle, and all in favor? Opposed, if any. Item carries. Next item.
Next is 7.2. We have the Fraser Valley Express Sub-Regional Transit System Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 1556.
Thank you.
Moved. Siemens.
Second, Director Facio.
Moved by Director Siemens and seconded by Director Facio. Any discussion?
Director Siemens.
Go ahead, Director Siemens.
Just wondering if there's any update with how the whole COVID situation is affecting the Fraser Valley Express, and if staff has any early indications on what's happening there.
Ms. Kinnaman, I anticipate, because I think we've stopped collecting fares on it, that will have an impact to our revenue, but is there a staff person on the line that we could?
There is actually, Mr. Chair. We do have Allison Stewart on the line. So I see she's turned her video on, so she can speak to all of her conversations with BC Transit and its partners as to how they're dealing with the COVID situation.
Ms. Stewart.
Yes, through the chair. We are planning on doing an update report to RACS in 2 weeks. The systems are all operating on their standard routes. Obviously, ridership has been down quite substantially, about 50% or between 50 and 60% on all of the routes. We are sort of monitoring the situation. We have heard recently from BC Transit that they will be pushing 20 to 2021 expansions into the next fiscal year. So right now, we don't quite know what that will mean in terms of the FEX expansion. So we'll hopefully know a bit more in a couple of weeks. But you know, things are running. We are providing service to essential workers. We have received comments from the public who that's their only way of getting to work in sort of critical type of work, like providing meal service in group homes and that sort of thing. So we are providing that service, but there will be a hit, obviously, with revenues, but hopefully there will be some movement from senior governments as to offset some of those losses, given that we are supporting provincial and federal mandates in being an essential service.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Were there any other comments? Director Dixon.
Just through you to Ms. Stewart, has the number of trips per day changed at all with the lower ridership?
The trips per day have not changed, is my understanding. However, there's fewer people allowed on the bus at each time. So the first response was the rear door entry, which took away the opportunity to collect fares. And then further concerns in terms of social distancing. The number of people being on the bus at any given time was also reduced. So we may have fewer people, but divided among more trips. I'm not sure what the status is on the FEX on that, but that's how it's been working on some of the other systems within the region.
And Director Angar, I think you had a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, yeah, I think you answered my question, Ms. Stewart. The bus drivers that are being protected by a rear door entry, did you say?
Yes.
Any other things in place to help them? I know the frontline workers are doing a tremendous job, and we really want to do everything that we can to protect them and keep them healthy. Is there any call for, say, masks? Any call for masks by riders or anything like that yet?
I haven't seen that yet, but there are notices in terms of appropriate behavior of passengers. They also, BC Transit also initiated a red line policy where people cannot cross the red line and get close to the bus drivers. The only people who are allowed to get on the bus at the front are people who need accessibility, so wheelchair accessibility and that sort of thing. So a lot has been done to create that separation, and BC Transit has certainly increased cleaning and more regular cleaning than in the past. So we will be providing some more information with the RACS report, and that will be made available for everyone.
Just one quick follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Does the bus driver have a sort of plexiglass behind them? It's been a long time since I've been on a bus. do they have a bit of an enclosure around them, or if somebody's sitting right next to them, could they be coughing and sneezing in their direction? I'm hoping Transit's covered all these things. I'm sure they probably have.
Yes, and that's what the red line is. It's a quite, I'm not quite sure what the distance is behind the bus driver.
Okay, good.
It's a gap between where the passengers are and where the bus driver is. So people are at the rear end of the bus in order to protect the bus drivers.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Don't see any. Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Any opposed? Don't see any opposed. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 7.3. We have the Cascade Carrot Creek Flood Control Local Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 1566.
Davidson moves.
It's moved by Director Davidson and seconded by
Angar.
Director Angar. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Don't hear any opposed. The motion carries. Next item.
Next is 7.4. We have the Popcom Sewer Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 1567.
Thank you.
Dicky moves.
Moved by Director Dicky and seconder.
Second by Raymond.
Director Raymond. Any discussion? Hearing none, are all in favor? And any opposed? I don't hear any opposition. The motion carries. Next item.
7.5 is the North Bend Sewer Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 1568.
Move, Director Raymond.
Thank you. Director Raymond is moved, seconded by Director, looks like Dixon.
Dixon.
And any discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Director Bales, did you have a question?
Oh, no, I should have had my mute on, I guess. I thought I had it on.
No problem. Just want to make sure. I don't see any discussion. Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Don't hear any opposition. The motion carries. Next item.
Item 7.6 is the Rexford Creek Storm Drainage Service Area Conversion and Amendment Bylaw number 1569.
A mover and a seconder, please.
Moved.
Second Adamson.
It's moved by Director Angar, seconded by Director Adamson. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Next item.
Next is 7.7. We have the Sub-Regional Animal Control Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 1570.
Moved. Alexis.
Seconded Hamilton.
Moved by Director Alexis, seconded by Director Hamilton. Discussion.
I just have a question, and I'm sorry, it's not necessarily a financial one. It's just that I am receiving so many different complaints about dogs off leash in an area that animal control normally patrols. And so it's now more than one a day emails. I'm just wondering, with COVID, are we still seeing the same level of enforcement? Are the commissioners out there as they would be normally under normal circumstances? Just wanted an update so I can respond back to the people that ask.
Ms. Kinnaman.
Sure. I will actually turn this over to Ms. Barker. I think she's turning her video on. She looks after that service and she can speak to any impacts from COVID-19.
Ms. Barker.
Thank you. So I've had some discussions about this with mission staff, particularly, who have voiced concern about some concerns about dog off leash. We are having some staffing challenges with the commissionaires in light of COVID. We have some people who are self-isolating. We are keeping up service best we can. We are trying our best to prioritize calls and staffing time. However, if you are receiving calls, it would be great if you could send those in my direction. Even if they're once a day, that's okay. I'll make sure that that is moved up to a priority to ensure that staff are monitoring that area. possibly not at the same degree as we were a couple of weeks ago, but we're certainly trying to tend to that the best we can.
Okay, thank you. I will do. I just want to say that it's one area only that I'm receiving the emails, and that's Fraser River Heritage Park. And it's so popular right now, of course, to recreate at the park. And I think we've got some new users that are not familiar with the rules. So I know we're going to increase signage over the next couple of days, but it would be really great to have a presence out there in particular.
Thank you, Director Alexis. Thank you, Director Barker. Any further questions? Don't see any, so I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Don't hear any opposition. The motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 7.8. We have the Service Area Amendment Bylaw numbers 1586, 1587, 1588, and 1589.
Thank you.
Move, Director Raymond.
It's moved by Director Raymond and seconded by Director Robb. Did I see you, Director Robb? Perfect. Discussion. Hearing none. Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Don't hear any opposition. The motion carries. Next item.
7.9 is the Fraser Valley Regional District Development Procedures and Delegation of Authority Bylaw number 1592.
Move, Lowen.
Second, Clute.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Lowen, seconded by Director Clute. In discussion on the item.
Davidson.
Director Davidson.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Looking at the staff report, it seems to be pretty much entirely concerned with planning procedure. And there's a number of items, it's a fairly dense report, and I do have a number of questions on it. I would like to take a deeper dive. And I'm thinking perhaps that discussion best be held at EASC. And I'm contemplating a motion to refer it to EASC. But before going there, I'd like to hear from the other directors and see what they have to say on the subject.
Thank you, Director Davidson. Were there any other comments or questions from directors to staff on this?
Dixon.
Director Dixon.
Just clarification, I think. So if I'm reading this correctly, the discussion, because quite often we do have discussion of these at EASC and they are can be a little bit longer. So would that still be able to occur at a full board meeting like tonight?
Ms. Kinnaman.
Perhaps it would be possible if we could call on Graham Daniluz, our Director of Planning and Development, and maybe he could speak a little bit to the reason that this is before you and what changes are being proposed, what problem we're trying to solve.
And most of these are, I mean, we've been put into a position where we're having to react, I think, quite quickly to the kind of changing COVID landscape. But I think it's a good, I certainly would welcome the discussion. And if there's an opportunity now for any questions to be answered while we're all here on the phone, that would be, or on the Zoom meeting, that would be fine. So Director Daniluz.
Thank you, through the chair. The intent of this bylaw is to provide an opportunity during times of emergency for permits, development permits and development variance permits, to go straight to the board rather than to go to the Electoral Area Services Committee first. And the motivation for that was that there was a time, especially earlier in this COVID pandemic, where the administration was considering whether committee meetings would be held. We also felt that there may be times during the emergency, not necessarily this emergency, but in flooding emergencies, for example, where people need fairly quick development approvals from us to either respond to an emergency or to recover quickly from an emergency. And in those cases, we felt it might also be advantageous to be able to bring these permits directly to the board. And that has a pretty significant effect on shortening overall approval windows. And I'd remind us that the intent is only to allow this opportunity during states of local or provincial emergency. The other thing that this bylaw would do is purely an opportunity. We consolidate a bylaw, an existing bylaw that delegates the issuance of certain kinds of development permits to the Director of Planning, and we consolidate that bylaw with this development procedures bylaw.
Director Davidson, did you have some specific questions to give you the opportunity for Director Daniluz?
Bales.
Oh, you're muted there, Director Davidson.
Oh, am I?
Nope,
Hang
Director
on.
Bales, I can hear you, but I'm just gonna see if we can get Director Davidson an opportunity because he was first out of the gate.
Thank you, Chair. I've sorted out my mute button now. The things that were jumping out at me, for example, were part of the motion that dealt with should a permit be deemed to be consistent with the OCP, then it could move past keys directly to the board. And I noticed that I think all of our OCPs, that there's 9 in the Fraser Valley Regional District, for example, they'll all have language that says that they should go through a major review every 5 to 8 years. And I think there's only one OCP right now that passes that test. So I'd be reluctant to get into language which basically says that alignment with OCP is a criteria that lets a given initiative of any kind pass go. And I just think there's need for a broader discussion around this. One of the other ones that jumped out at me, for example, was again, the development permit. A lot of the times the fact that it shows up on the EASC agenda at all is really the only kind of meaningful, we'll call it notification that people in the community get. If something's just going to show up on the board agenda without any kind of forewarning to it, other than the usual 2 or 3 business days between agendas being published and the board meeting, there's really not a whole lot of time for community engagement at all, in my opinion. So I think we need to take that deeper discussion back to EASC as to what the significance of these things actually are.
Thank you, Director Davidson. Director Daniluz, did you want to respond to any of Director Davidson's concerns?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. The staff report identifies an opportunity that the Local Government Act provides for the board to waive public hearings for zoning amendments that are consistent with the official community plan. And so the staff's intent with this report is to bring that opportunity to the attention of the board and seek the board's direction, consent for staff bringing these files forward on a case-by-case basis with the intent of having the board consider waiving public hearings. And again, these would be for zoning amendment bylaws that are consistent with the official community plan. Of course, we understand that the board would be looking to balance the needs to move quickly during times of emergency with the need to consult the community and have bylaws and permits go through a transparent public process.
Thank you, Director Daniluz.
Director Raymond.
So I saw Director Bales, I believe.
Yep. Yep.
And Dickie, if I could.
Yep, I'll go Director Bales, and then I've got a speaker list started.
I'd like to speak to
Pranger. Pranger.
Perfect. What we'll do is we'll start with Director Bales, and then I'll call your name as we go through to the next speakers. So we'll start with Director Bales.
Yeah, I would concur with what Director Davidson said, in that if we're going to skip the process of a public meeting, we really need that extra timeline for the public to get engaged, because there really isn't much time when the agenda comes out to the meeting time in EASC, and then to think about it before the board, so people don't have much time to react if they don't have that opportunity of a meeting. So they need that extra time. Besides, it has to be ratified at the board anyway. So unless we're going to skip the timeline, the board, and do an online or a telephone vote in emergencies, which could happen in an emergency, then for regular bylaws and amendments or variances, I think it should go through the process of the EASC personally.
Thank you, Director Bales. I'm going to go to Director Raymond next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm of the same opinion that I feel that this should be going to EASC so that we have an opportunity to look at these. During an emergency, I understand them having to make decisions on the fly. And during the emergency, I have full trust in our staff that they know what they're doing. But if in all these, I'm just worried about where this is going to lead. I would like to see the majority of all of this coming through EASC first. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Raymond. I'm going to go to Director Dicky next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I certainly appreciate the comments that the electoral area directors have made in regards to this issue. I think the staff are trying to find a balance to allow very economically important projects to move forward in these exceptional circumstances. But in my experience, staff are always very careful to sound out the electoral area director before taking a position on any of these files. And they do point out in the staff report that any contentious files would not have a public hearing waived. But I think there's a good argument that more fulsome discussion should be held at the EASC committee. So I'd be supportive of this going to EASC.
Director Dixon, next, please.
Just the same. I'd like to have a chance to hear a little bit more about it and discuss it at EASC. I have concerns with, well, I do have confidence in the staff, and I get that, but it's a little more things on public perception and trying to slip something in, which I know isn't the case, but just to make sure that isn't what's being thought. So I'd like to see this at EASC.
Director Alexis.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, didn't know if I was pressing it or unpressing it. I just wanted to say in Mission, we went to a similar process in looking at those within the OCP. Staff, again, are very sensitive to those items that may be more contentious, and those wouldn't make the list of those that were brought without a public hearing. But I just wanted to comment that we have, the public is able to comment still under the processes that we have established. And we've also delayed the timeline some so that it would be, in our case, a first and second reading with deferring of the public hearing, and then a little bit more time than usual for the public to come back at third reading to make some comments before council makes their decision. So I know for the next agenda, for example, I think we've got 4 secondary dwellings on the agenda, all within the OCP, all meeting the mandate of what's necessary if you want a secondary dwelling in your home. And so those are the kinds of things that staff will bring to us, because we recognize that there's going to be a tremendous backlog if we don't move forward. And we want to make sure that we're not in that situation, because we have enough issues with timelines and everything else. So I just wanted to make those comments that the public still can contribute, absolutely, and that we have adjusted the timelines. But we have already established the same rules.
Thank you. Director Pranger. I think Director Pranger might have her phone muted.
Director Dicky spoke the sentiments that I was going to bring up, so I won't go any further, other than to say that the Minister of Municipal Affairs on our conference calls has suggested that this is a method of continuing to stimulate economic development while, if and when it is an item that is in the official community plan.
Thank you. And I want to just double check. Was there one more speaker for the first time?
I'd like to talk.
Sure, Director Adamson.
I think that it should go back to East. I understand what Director Alexis says, but they know, like she lives in a town where they know the town. Our staff don't really know, like people in Yale, our staff don't know them. So there could be other issues that they wouldn't know unless we get together and talk about it. I just think we're pushing it. If somebody wants to make a delegation, they got to do it a week before, right? So if they don't get the information until 3 days before, how can there be a delegation? They get to come after we vote and ask questions. So I think this is not a good thing. Take it to East. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Adamson. Director Danilus, could I just get a little bit of clarification now that we've heard some comment and we've heard kind of a summary of some of the concerns from the electoral area services members. It seems like it sounds a little bit like the concern is that this would be kind of preempting a public opportunity for comment, and I'm just wondering, just identifying that this is for extenuating circumstances, for emergencies only. But did you have any, I just want to give you an opportunity to respond to any of the comments that you've heard thus far.
Thank you, Chair. It's indeed the case that our idea is that during emergencies only, the board may wish to waive public hearings for those bylaws that are non-contentious and are consistent with the official community plan, and further that the board might wish to see development permits or development variance permits come to the board in those instances where there's some benefit to emergency response or emergency recovery. I agree and appreciate that public hearings are really the primary opportunity for rural residents to weigh in on development applications in their community, and indeed it is difficult for staff to be aware of all the kinds of concerns that rural residents may have, and appreciate and understand that concern. The intent of staff was to simply bring forward opportunities for board's consideration for streamlining and expediting during the emergency situation, and we fully appreciate that that needs to be balanced against public input and process.
So just so I'm aware, if the development variance permit or development permit that met the criteria from staff, so we're under a state of emergency, and it was brought to the meeting for discussion this evening, it wouldn't preempt a public process. The public would have an opportunity to comment, to weigh in. If we were meeting in person, the public would have an opportunity to attend the board meeting. They wouldn't have to sign up as a delegation. They'd be able to attend and ask questions in the board meeting. Is that correct, Ms. Kinnaman?
Yes, that's correct, but maybe we'll just have our planner comment on that.
Indeed, that's the case. The most common permit that we'd be talking about is a development variance permit, and in that case, we send out a notice prior to the board meeting and invite written input, and also people who receive the notice or other interested parties can come to the board meeting to express their concerns. With development permits, those are much more like akin to building permits, and we typically don't have public input on development permits. So I think we're not losing a public input opportunity with respect to development permits.
Director Raymond.
Thank you. Director Raymond, you had a comment?
Yes, I'm wondering if it would be appropriate right now for me to make a motion to defer this to the EASC.
Okay, motion to refer to EASC. Is there a seconder? Director Davidson?
Davidson, second.
Thank you. And I'll call the question on referral. All in favor? And opposed? The motion carries. EASC will contemplate these items and we will see it back at the board. Next item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Danilus, for your work and your comments on this, and look forward to seeing it back at the next board meeting.
So moving next, we move to item 7.10, which is the FVRD Animal Control Sub-Regional Regulations Amendment Bylaw number 1593. Staff are available to answer any questions, and you've got the motions before you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So looking for first reading. Mover and a seconder.
Move, Director Raymond.
Second, Roth.
It's moved by Director Raymond, second by Director Ross. Discussion. Hearing none. Oh, Director Dixon.
Just so if I'm on, so the plan is to waive the 25% late fees, right?
That's correct.
Which I think that's very kind of us because they were due before all of this kicked in the first place. So I do get that we want to at least collect the original amount that we were hoping for. Is the thought that that is realistic?
Ms. Kinnaman.
Through the chair to Director Dixon. I think every year, and I will turn this over to Ms. Barker to comment because this is her file, the animal control file. I think it is fairly standard that we as an organization see a significant number of dog license fees that go unpaid year over year. And likely it's some of the same customers that experience this. I think that there's a percentage that every year come in and they will pay their dog license fee as well as the late fee. And there are also a portion that still will not pay and will end up in collections. But Ms. Barker, did you want to comment any further on that one?
I would agree with Ms. Kinnaman. We had started our yearly large volumes of calls to the public, informing them that their dog licenses were due and we hadn't yet received payment. And we received a much larger than normal complaint load to the staff that was making these calls, asking for some kind reprieve of the late fees. And therefore, we had this discussion with Ms. Kinnaman about the possibility of this year providing a bit of discount.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I maybe I'll jump in a little bit as well here because in some of the preliminary discussion that I had with staff when they first brought this up, I think they identified that optically we had local governments all around us that were waiving fees altogether. So not just attempting to collect late fees, or penalties, but actually waiving utility fees, waiving different fees. And I think optically it could look quite discouraging from the regional district if we were penalizing people in an extremely challenging time right now. So this was one way of kind of giving a little bit of leeway. Of course, we still want to collect the regular dog licensing fee, but and we hope and expect that people will pay their licensing fees as they are able. But we recognize that in these extremely trying times, people are going to be stretched. And if you had to choose between keeping your lights on and food on your table, certainly I don't think the Fraser Valley Regional District wants to contribute to having to make very difficult choices. So I appreciate staff looking for ways to provide a little bit of relief to people, and certainly, if not relief, not adding to the angst that people are already feeling. So thank you.
Mercer.
Director Mercer.
I think that all sounds great, but as was said, we have to remember that when I came in and paid my dues in December, I couldn't even spell COVID. And so what we're doing is, we're just, I'm not sure what the right expression is, but these weren't due when this crisis started. They were due a couple months before. And I accept that, waiving it's a good thing. Just pointing out that it was due a long time before this started.
But we're just to clarify, we're waiving the penalty. We're not collecting the penalty. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. The expectation is still that dog owners still need to license their dogs for 2020, and they would still be expected to pay their regular license fee.
I get that. It's they were due on, I think, January 1st, but I get that. Thank you.
Pranger?
Director Pranger.
I have to concur with Director Mercer and Dixon.
Thank you, Director Pranger.
Director Angar?
Director Angar, go ahead.
I must say, as somebody with the heritage of being my folks and the people that came before me being very tight-fisted with their money, the resentment towards organizations that want to ding you 2% interest for being a month late on something, I think in this time specifically, it's really important to extend that graciousness and to show at least we have a concern. Other than that, we run the risk of really poor public relations and people saying, there goes another corporate entity just ready to work us over. So I totally get that there may be people that abuse the generosity, but on the other hand, it's a nickel's worth of public relation goes a long way in this kind of an instance, and I think that's essential. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Angar. I don't see any other indication for discussion, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? I don't hear any opposition. The motion carries. Next item.
So that would have been motion number 1, Mr. Chair, for first reading. So next
second and third. And mover and a seconder for second and third, please. Director, looked like Director Raymond and seconded by Director Hamilton. And any discussion on second and third? I think it's fair to say we've encompassed our discussion on this motion in the initial first reading. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? And the item carries. And the final motion, please. A mover and a seconder.
And
Facio. Moved by Director Facio. And did I hear seconded?
You heard Angar.
Angar, Director Angar, thank you. And no discussion on the item. I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? The motion carries. Next item.
Next item, moving down to section 8, we have 8.1, development variance permit to reduce the interior lot line setback for a single family dwelling at 216C Lakeshore Drive, Cultist Lake Park in Electoral Area H. And I would just let the board know that, again, in the mail out that was sent by the planning department for all of these development variance permits, the public was asked to email submissions for development variance permit items. For 8.1, we did receive 2 pieces of correspondence, and there are copies that were circulated to you regarding these applications, for that application.
Thank you. And what is the board's wishes on this? This is for electoral area directors. Mover and a seconder.
I'll move them. Dixon moves.
Adamson seconds.
It's moved by Director Dixon, seconded by Director Adamson. Discussion on the item.
Yes.
Director Dixon.
Could, Mr. Chair. Probably through you to Mr. Daniluz. I know that this item has gone by the Cultist Lake Park Board, and they are have come up with a plan that we see here, where the entrance will be off of Monroe. My concern is with the correspondence that we've received. We talked about underground streams and the possibility of those impacting the existing houses. So I'm not quite sure whether I want to ensure that if this is passed, that will, I'm not sure the process to make sure that that really isn't going to be the case, that these people that exist will end up with streams running through their house because the neighbor's building. So maybe Mr. Dan, if through you to Mr. Danos, if he could maybe explain that process a little bit more.
Thank you, Director Danos.
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, through the building permitting process, we will require the lease lot owner to address drainage through the lot, to address the disposal of stormwater from roof leaders in the lot. There'll be a professional assessment before we issue a building permit. So I think you could feel comfortable that the drainage issues and movement of water through the ground would be addressed through the building permit process.
Okay. Could Mr. Chair, one more, just to follow up?
Yep.
So just to clarify, because I had a relative that was living on the moving mountain over there in the Rosedale area with water underground, so, and other things. So if they will not get their permit until Fraser Valley Regional District is satisfied that that is not going to impact the existing homes. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, you're correct, Director Dixon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Dixon. And any other comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And any opposed? See any opposition? The motion carries. Next item.
Next is 8.2. We have development variance permit to reduce the interior lot line setback for agricultural buildings at 9518 and 9466 Catherwood Road in Electoral Area G. And I will note that we did not receive any written submissions from the public for that item, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And what is the board's wishes? We need a mover and a second. It's moved by Director Stobart and seconded by Director Adamson. And discussion on the item. Seeing none, you ready for the question? All in favor? Any opposed? Don't hear any opposed. The motion carries. Next item.
Next is 8.3. We have development variance permit to reduce the interior lot line setback for an agricultural structure at 40191 Lougheed Highway in Electoral Area G.
Thank you. And didn't see any correspondence on this one either.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Mover and a seconder, please.
Move Director Stobart.
Moved by Director Stobart and seconded by
Adamson.
Director Adamson. And discussion on the item. Seeing none, are you ready for the question? All in favor? And any opposition? Don't hear any opposition. The motion carries. Next item.
9.1, we have essential services mutual aid agreement with Hope, Kent, and Harrison Hot Springs. There's a motion for your consideration and staff are available to answer any questions.
So moved.
Recommendation.
Thank you. That was moved by everybody. It sounded like Director Facio and seconded by, was it Pranger?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. And discussion. I guess just thank you to all of the respective parties for the good work on this item. I think in this trying time, we've really seen the best of a lot of people working very hard, kind of putting differences aside and helping each other out. And it's very nice to see all of these respective local governments getting together and pledging to assist in these times of need. So thank you all. And I understand from speaking to staff that there is still opportunity later on should other municipalities want to join into the mutual aid agreement. We have the ability later on to do so. So thank you very much for all of your respective hard work. I don't see any other comments, so I'll call the question. All in favor? And any opposed? And no opposed. The motion carries. Next item.
10.1, we have a community food garden at the FVRD DeRoche office, 10220 North DeRoche Road, and there's a motion for your consideration.
Thank you. And
Bales?
Moved by Director Bales and seconded
Adamson, second.
by Director Adamson. And discussion?
I actually would like to amend it to just to say to work with Director Bales on any problems that might arise with the configuration of the property or insurance, things like that, because I'm in touch with community members that might have answers for things. So.
Okay.
Director Raymond?
It's just, sorry, I just want to clarify here. So the amendment, you're moving an amendment to work with Director Bales, and I didn't catch the
before it goes to EASC on this application or motion for consideration.
Okay. Is there somebody who second that amendment?
Adamson will. Right.
Okay, Director Adamson. Okay, discussion on the amendment.
Lowen.
Director Lowen, go ahead.
Yeah, isn't it just, wouldn't it just be appropriate to have, to refer this, or whatever the right term is, to staff to, are they in agreement to work with Director Bales on before it comes to EASC rather than making it an official motion?
The way I read this, and I could be wrong, but let me clarify with Ms. Kinnaman, and I just want to check. I felt like it should be implied that the staff would work with the area director on this item. It was the area director who brought it up. It would only make sense to me. Is it necessary, or would it? I don't want it to slow the process down for sure, but I want to make sure we respect Director Bales' wishes and tap into her local expertise and knowledge there. But is it? I felt like it was implied, but maybe we could get some clarification.
Sure, Mr. Chair, absolutely. Staff have been working with Director Bales actually on this file already. I would also like to point out that in the discussion at EASC, Director Stobart also plays a role in this particular project, as he had identified some other options that might be available and some community interest as well. And so I have assigned a couple of staff members actually to work on this report and pull all of the information together to bring it forward to EASC in May. There's absolutely no way that we would be able to bring forward such a report without the direct input of both Director Bales and Director Stobart. So I don't particularly see a need for this motion to be amended, but I'll leave it with you to decide.
Dickie.
Director Dicky, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly think that it's integral that staff work with directors in preparing the reports and make sure that their interests are well heard. I would caution directors from taking a part in the writing of reports. I think that's strictly a staff responsibility, and we should take those reports, and if we disagree with them, we can vote against them. But I think we should respect staff's autonomy in drawing up those reports. Thank you.
Davidson?
Go ahead, Director Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, I appreciate where Director Bales is coming from, but I would be astounded if the report made it to EASC without directors feeling they had adequate input to it. And I'm sure if by some bizarre chance that did happen, it would be spoken to at EASC and we'd reconsider it. So I don't think I would be supporting the motion to amend. One point for future Zoom meetings that I'm finding kind of missing when we're talking about amendments is when staff would bring up on the screen and type away and show us what the proposed amendment actually looks like. So I'm hoping for future Zoom meetings, we can have a similar experience, potentially through staff screen sharing, and let us actually see what an amended motion would look like. Thank you.
What I might add too is if we had directors could assist in the process, if they're contemplating an amendment to a motion, they could provide it in writing prior, and we could maybe have staff assist that way as well by putting it up so the rest of us could read it. But let's go ahead and call the question on the amendment. All in favor? And opposed?
Davidson.
I'm going to say the amendment fails.
Owen.
And now we're back to the motion. And are we ready for the question on the main motion? I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? The motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 10.2. We have a request for Provincial Campfire Ban. There is a motion for your consideration.
So moved, Angar.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Angar and seconded by Director Adamson. And discussion on the item.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Angar.
Go ahead, Director Angar.
I think the province has sent a mixed message and inadvertently caused some problems for my electoral area and perhaps others as well. The physical distancing that has tried to be achieved is well done with a provincial park ban. I know people love to get outside and it's probably healthy for them, but it is the main reason is to stop people from mingling together. Unfortunately, they, at the same time as banning the BC parks attendance by people, they are still allowing campfires in Crown land. And the campfires in Crown land in my area probably more than people visiting the BC parks in my area. So what we have is the one hand, we're saying, no, don't go out here. Don't come out here. But on the other hand, they're saying, yeah, it's okay to come out and have a campfire and enjoy yourself. So it's a mixed message. And I would really like to see that communicated from the board to the province that it is not appropriate to have campfires allowed in a Crown land area while simultaneously not allowing them in provincial parks.
Thank you, Director Angar. Any other discussion?
Davidson.
Okay, I saw Director Davidson, and I'll start the list. So I'll call out, I see Davidson, and then I've got Bales and Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. For the benefit of the municipal directors, this motion came from the floor at EASC. When I look at it, it seems a little sparse. I don't know if there's enough there for staff to formulate a request to the province and what that actual request looks like. Is it a letter? Do we need to get some of Director Angar's input into it, better express it? I don't know if there's enough there to be actionable in a meaningful way. So I guess that's a question through to staff for their comment on that. Thank you.
Ms. Kinnaman.
Through the chair to Director Davidson, I feel quite confident that we have enough information to put together a letter and a request to the province and the appropriate individuals to send in this resolution and the accompanying material. I'm always open to sharing that in advance, but I think that the time is a little bit of the essence on this particular item, and I would like to get this off sooner rather than later. I would point out, though, I did actually have the opportunity to have a conversation with the fire center manager in Victoria, and it wasn't a particularly positive conversation. It was made very clear to me that they do not take the complete ban of campfires provincially lightly, and that this is a perennial issue. And I was reminded that our regional district has full authority to enact its own campfire bylaw if we so chose. I reminded that individual that that's all well and good, that regional districts have that authority. However, were we to do so in some of these problem areas where 99% of the land is Crown land, any bylaw that we would establish would not actually address the problem area. And again, I was pleasantly reminded that there are areas of the province who have to be taken into consideration for reasons of tourism and other cultural uses where they would be very much opposed to such a request. And that is the perennial balance that is the fire center manager's job in terms of when it is appropriate to call for a campfire ban. I again pointed out that there is a bit of a discrepancy between some of these issues when you have a closure of provincial parks and some of the challenges that are being faced in many of our jurisdictions. But I wasn't particularly hopeful that any amount of material coming forward was going to change this individual's mind.
Director Bales?
Okay, I'm just reading the wording. What would happen if the provincial parks were opened in fire season? It might be better to change the wording a bit. But I'm concerned on two different levels. The reason they put a ban on was to help people with immune systems or poor immune systems, and to just make it easier for people to breathe with the COVID scenario that's happening. It seems like that was the reason the province put on an early ban. So in the spirit of that, campfires are going to add to that, and in my area as well, since the parks are closed, they're going off-road where they're not going to be monitored as much. Mm-hmm. And putting out campfires could be an issue. So our fire departments are low staffed right now, and I would assume that there's not enough staff to really monitor properly in a lot of the Crown land areas where people are going and having campfires. So there's those issues. I did have a constituent who wanted me to be in favor of campfires in Lake Eric, for instance, but I've also got two other constituents that have been complaining for years, and probably three that have been complaining for years that they have breathing problems. And they would like a total ban forever, but I would not be supporting that either, because a lot of people, there's a lot of power outages, and there's a lot of people that depend on burning wood during power outages, for one thing. And yeah, so I wouldn't be in support of a forever ban on campfires. But for right now, I think the spirit of it was that we're trying to help people with compromised immune systems. So in that aspect, I think I would hope that we could pull this off somehow.
Thank you, Director Bales. Director Dixon?
Just to clarify, if I may, are we asking that, or our request that they are banning campfires in the provincial parks? That's already happening, and Crown land, but not people's personal private homes?
Ms. Kinnaman?
My understanding is that if there is a call for a provincial ban, it's a provincial ban. So I know that some of our municipalities struggle with this as well, in that, we don't want visitors coming to the area and having a campfire, but my campfire in my backyard's okay. That's where the confusion lies. And then certainly for fire departments and those that have to enforce this kind of situation, it creates a lot of confusion in the community. And so my understanding of this was that we were just simply asking for an all-out provincial ban on campfires, like we see at other points during the season when conditions are quite dry.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
I'm just going to check and see if there's any other comments for a first time, Director Angar, and then we'll come to you in a second time.
Alexis would like to speak.
Go ahead, Director Alexis.
Thank you so much. Thank you, CEO Kinnerman, because it's exactly what Mission is struggling with. They residents don't want to lose their ability to have their fire pits going in their backyards. But we made a decision to include fire pits when the ban came, and so there's been tremendous pushback. But I think if I could just say, there is some urgency to this. We have a long weekend approaching in May. We have the same issue up at Stave Lake, and it's a scary time in Crown lands for sure. So I would like us to move this along quickly, because we're out of time. It's 3 weeks away, and we need to make sure that we have a very strong support of a lot around the board table, so that we can make sure that we have a safe long weekend coming up, because I'm really worried about that weekend.
Okay, Director Ross.
Sorry, just unmuting. Yeah, I guess just to add to all the comments, it's, you know, because of COVID-19, this was one of the reasons for the ban. It does affect your upper respiratory, so it makes you more vulnerable if you should get COVID-19 and you have to breathe in some of these pollutants then it does make you a lot more vulnerable to having more extreme health effects if you do get COVID. So I think during this time, we really have to protect people as much as we possibly can.
Okay, Director Raymond, and then I've got Director Adamson. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in agreement that we should probably send a letter off. Whether it'll do any good or not, I don't know. What I am worried about is there's no way that we should be putting a bylaw in place throughout our regional district, because that just gives the government the opportunity to tell us that we have to do all the enforcement, which I would be totally opposed to.
Thank you. And Director Adamson?
Yeah, it's not just the campfires, it's the people coming. My residents in Yale, they wanted the beachfront shut because just people coming to town, you know, people are afraid they're going to catch this. And I was in Sunshine Valley today putting up some signs, and the complaints there was the ATVers. Like, you know, they're still coming to the valley to play on their ATV, even though people say stay at home. Right? You know, I don't know. I understand that city people need to get fresh air. That's, you know, great, but maybe we should just say stay at home.
Yeah, I think you're bang on, Director Adamson. I think that's the messaging that's coming certainly from the provincial health officer is please stay at home. All non-essential travel should be canceled and not contemplated. And you know, unfortunately, there's a small minority of the population that isn't quite getting that message and is still traveling around the province as if we're not in a pandemic. So. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We should be avoiding all non-essential travel. And but let's go back to the motion at hand. I just want to collect any final first-time comments on this, and maybe I'll just say I'll take anyone who is in opposition to the motion. So we've collected quite a few in favor, and I just want to see if we have any opposing views on the item. And then I will give Director Angar kind of a last opportunity. So Director Davidson, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So maybe I'm going to totally confuse the issue at this point. Maybe we're asking for the wrong thing. Maybe we should be asking the province to consider closing Crown lands to recreational use for as long as provincial parks are closed. Is that too much? Just a thought. Thank you.
Director Raymond.
Okay, for first time here, one more time.
Director Stobart.
Go ahead, Director Stobart.
Yes, thank you. If memory serves, when this was first brought up, and one of the big concerns is, again, aside from the health issues of smoke on a compromised immune system, we also we saw nearly as much traffic out this way on the last long weekend as we did previously. A lot of those people ended up camping along the sides of the roads in many informal areas. So when they were camping at the rec sites, when they're camping in the parks, they're using formal fire pits, formal areas that are designated for burning. They're still burning campfires, but now they're just burning them out underneath the trees and the duff in a lot of areas that are unsafe. And that was, I think, our major concern was, especially as dry as it was the fire concern. Now that we've got people burning areas where, again, they're not being observed, and they're burning them many times in areas where they shouldn't be, but people are a little ignorant of the situation, I believe. And I thought that was the main concern.
Can I jump in here for a second, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Ms. Kinman.
One other aspect of this, and I think somebody mentioned it early on, was the additional tax on, and I mean taxing of resources of our fire departments, our volunteer fire departments. We have, like many fire services around the province, have been significantly challenged with having enough PPE to respond to all of these events. And with increased numbers of campfires and folks who are not staying at home and going into the deep areas of Crown land, even if some of those areas would normally be responded to by BC Wildfire, we're still getting calls for our fire departments. And so we're trying to also be mindful of the fact that we need to reserve those fire departments and those individuals for when we really need them, and making the best use of their time and their talents, not on some of these events that really could be avoided. And so that was another aspect of the conversation that was discussed at EASC.
Jason, if I might.
Go ahead, Director Mercer.
Thank you. If this letter to the province just does go ahead, I would ask that Ms. Kinnaman maybe contact Zoya at the city. I know when Chilliwack dealt with the fire ban, it was prompted by a very well-written letter from an emergency physician. And there's some great language in that letter which would help form part of our letter to the province if it does go forward.
Director Popov?
Just a question. Now, should we, this is kind of along the same lines as Director Stobart, maybe we should be asking the province to reopen the parks where it's controllable, where people have their actual fire pits, and try to maybe push the province to have a look at that, opposed to trying to put a ban, because these parks are set up in such a way that would allow for physical distancing, except for the washrooms, but they can maybe keep the washrooms closed. But just a thought.
Okay.
Director Raymond.
Thank you. And so Director Raymond, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for your information, on the Easter long weekend, all provincial parks were closed up here, all signed. However, every campsite in those parks were filled with people. They all had campfires going, and there was no one out there to tell them that they shouldn't be there. So they're not enforcing any of it. And so we're having an issue around the whole thing as to why they're even putting this out, to be quite honest.
Thank you. So I think we've had really good discussion on this item. And before we go to you, Director Angar, I think staff have heard a lot of the commentary, and I'm wondering, the crux of the letter is to call for a provincial-wide campfire ban. But in some of the substantiation, I think it's worth identifying that the lack of enforcement and coupled with the fact that the closure of the provincial parks has put an undue stress on regional districts, on our volunteer fire departments, et cetera, and that by doing so, the province has kind of created some unintended consequences that are putting huge pressures on regional districts and on our electoral areas, especially some of our rural areas, and that rather than, I guess, if they're going to contemplate these closures, they need to back them up with the appropriate enforcement and the appropriate levels of enforcement that don't put undue stress on regional districts or municipalities. And I think, you know, without prescribing to the letter what how staff write this correspondence, I think I'm pretty comfortable with the amount of feedback that we've received from the board in formulating something that kind of indicates the wishes from East and includes some of the comments that we made tonight. I'm going to go to Director Angar for the final word, and then I'm going to call the question in interest of time. Director Angar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the our CAO. Can the province not allow us to designate the designated area specifically and not the whole province? I understand they get very touchy about having to make blanket statements of no campfires in the entire province, but surely they have the ability to say FERD areas A, B, C, D, and E, and F, and GH, or you know, whatever we choose. Should they not have the capacity to designate specific locations that we're having problems in?
Through the chair to Director Angar, my understanding is that when they have different regions than we do. There's the province is broken down, and oftentimes you will see these fire bans throughout the summer months that apply to certain areas and not others. I haven't seen them ever do it by, say, regional district and pick out specific areas like that, because I think that then the direction would be that we have the authority to do that ourselves, right? So we could certainly explore that with them, but really they look at things more on their specified regions as well as the whole province.
So does their region cover the Lower Mainland, for instance, and not have to include the entire province?
Yeah, and I would have to turn it over. I'm not sure if we have reg here, but I think it's called the South Coast region, or there's a word for it, and it covers a different area. It's a much larger area than the FERD for sure.
I'm going to jump in. I don't think that's necessary. I think I'd caution the board to getting too prescriptive with it. I think we have to identify the issue that we're seeing in our areas here, identify the lack of enforcement and the unintended consequences that this is causing, and call on the province basically to come up with a solution for the problem that they are creating. So I think we've got some good discussion, and I'm going to call the question. All in favor and opposed? And the motion carries. Next item.
Next item, Mr. Chair, is our consent agenda. There's a motion for your consideration for items 11.1.1 and 11.1.2.
Thank you.
Move, Adamson.
Moved by Director Adamson and seconded by Director Popov. And all in favor? Opposed? Items carry. Next item.
Moving now to section 13, we have items for information and correspondence. If anyone wanted to separate out those items and for discussion or comment.
Thank you. And board members on any one of these correspondence items, any questions? Don't hear any. Next item.
Next, we'll move down to reports by board directors, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Director Raymond.
And Dixon.
Okay. And I don't hear anyone else. So Director Raymond.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to give a quick update on what the community here is doing in dealing with COVID-19. We have our community bus, which goes in every second week to do shopping. However, there's only one person on the bus. All orders for shopping throughout the community are forwarded down to the stores. They're prepared down there, prepaid, and then they're delivered back up here to their doorsteps. The other is that we have a phone messaging system set up where all the elderly or those living alone or those that may have underlying medical conditions are called every day to make sure that everything is running smoothly with them, or if there's anything that they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Raymond. And thank you for your efforts and your community's efforts. Could use some of your help down here. And Director Dixon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a thank you and a shout out to the Columbia Valley Fire Department and the Cultist Lake Fire Department. Both of them have had calls within the last week or so and just responded quickly and professionally, and I know they train hard, so I just want to make sure we thank them and acknowledge them for their work.
Thank you, Director Dixon. And I see it looked like Director Adamson.
Yeah, thanks.
Go ahead.
Well, I put up signs throughout Area B saying for residents only. And the day before I put the signs up, there was about 30 to 40 people camping on the beach at the bottom of Yale. And after that, nobody's been there. And that was the long weekend, nobody there. That the signs, like locks, only, like a sign will only keep certain type of people from going. Just like a lock only keeps honest people out. I find staff's doing a great job. I know they're busy and everything, but when you got a question you want to answer, you should be able to get a hold of the person in charge of that. I think we should get a list of cell phone numbers for the directors of each department, so that we don't have to leave messages and wait days. It's just a suggestion.
And I know Ms. Kinnaman in my discussions that obviously dealing with the operational challenges here at the regional district, but I anticipate we'll start to roll more people back in, and again, following the medical health officer's advice and following and looking out, number one, for the safety of our staff. We'll make sure we do that, and I think identifying communication channels, especially in emergency times, is an important thing, and we have got some processes in place. So thank you, Director Adamson. And was there another director who had Director Facio? Did you have a report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's as Director Adamson just mentioned, as you probably all know, Harrison has been virtually on a lockdown for several weeks now. The signage works, the people are staying away. We still get the few coming at the moment on Sundays, but if we're all listening to Dr. Bonnie Henry, she is looking at maybe easing some of these controls before the long weekend. So we're waiting for information on that regarding easing controls for opening of restaurants and businesses, and also for the opening of provincial parks. So that's what her statements were on this today, and there's more coming during the course of the week. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Facio.
Chair Lum, if I may,
Go
can
ahead.
I ask Director Facio, is the boat launch closed or open at Harrison?
It's officially closed. We do not have an attendant on duty, but at the moment it's just for locals only, the signage is.
Okay, thank you.
But other people are coming and using it, because we don't have the manpower to man it ourselves or have people standing there. So it hasn't been abused as of yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Facio. And I just want to do one final check if there are any other directors with reports. Don't see any. Next item.
Now we're into the public question period for items relevant to the agenda, Mr. Chair. So like in our previous meeting, email submissions were available to the public prior to today. Also, since we are live web streaming, members of the public with questions on items relevant to the agenda can call 604-702-5480. This number was published in our social media channels and on our website with lots of advance warning. And so we will just take a brief pause here and allow our web stream to catch up and see if staff come running in with written questions for us to read out to you and respond to.
Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. And the only rule for the public is you have to start any of your phone call with first-time caller, long-time listener. And as I warned you earlier, my grandmother may phone us tonight. But I expect she's probably gone to bed.
So I'm not seeing any comments coming from our staff. They did confirm that the announcement came through on our broadcast. So I don't anticipate that we have any members of the public sitting at home frantically trying to dial in. So we can look for an emotion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved. Moved by Director Facio, seconded by Director Pranger. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and we are adjourned.
And so just to remind the board, we'll just take 2 or 3 minutes to let our staff